All right, let's go talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie. Welcome back. We are Earth's Mightiest Critics. Hopefully, you were joining us. You hung out with us after the Mandalorian live stream, which we just finished up. Here talking with Don Shanahan of Every Movie Has a Lesson and 25YL and Cinephile History Fit podcast. He is a film obsessive. And also affiliated with Film Obsessive. There you go. Like, you know what? Jeez, Don.
Yeah.
Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of the Spoiler Room and Special Mark Productions, and I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. I feel like we should just put up like a title movie card in front of us to do all these introductions, but we're not going to do that tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie, which came out last weekend and broke all the records. It was a Super Smash Brothers all over the box office totals. And given the fact that what's the next bit of competition this has? Is it Guardians 3 in May?
Yeah, Guardians 3.
Pretty much.
That's it. Yeah.
We're talking about $1 billion baby right here. Now this is a classic example. I love it when there are movies that come out that are kind of blockbusters that both critics and audience members agree on. And then there's also ones that they disagree on. And this is one of those cases. I haven't looked at the tomato meter recently, but the audiences love Mario, as evidenced by the box office, and the critics tend to hate it. At least according to the tomato meter, I'm in the mostly love it camp. Wait a second. Hold on a second. We've got someone else here.
57. Yeah.
Wahoo!
57%?
57% right now. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, on the tomato meter. Okay. Well, and then what's the audience score? Do you have that?
Stall for a podcast, 96.
90. That is a
there.
gap.
I know it. It's a contrarian Olympics again with the audience versus the critics.
Yeah.
They're like, they don't like it. Well, I like it more. You all suck.
Well, we'll talk a bit about that because I think it's very interesting. I'm curious to see. I know some of your opinions, at least I think I do, on this film. I'm very curious to get into what this movie is, why it works or why it doesn't, and what we feel the disconnect is. Is it warranted? I'm open to that. I really enjoyed this movie. I probably am biased, honestly, because I grew up playing Mario Brothers in its various incarnations. I felt like, as I think the world does, we are all united in believing that you can only go up from the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo and, my God, Dennis Hopper. And also, it just, it's a bright, colorful, no nonsense, in and out in an hour and a half, fun animated family adventure. And I took my family. We all enjoyed it a lot. It's not perfect, but I think it does what it needs to do. And if the talk of this being sort of the Iron Man that sets up the wider Nintendo cinematic universe, which it kind of has to now. I mean, they got Zelda and Kirby. Don, you're pulling for the Kirby, I can tell just by your background.
Right.
And all these different things. I'm kind of all there for it. I wouldn't mind seeing a Mario sequel, but I might be alone in that. I don't know. What are some thoughts on the Super Mario Brothers movie? Jeff, let's start with you.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are terrific about it. It looks like very expensive. The animation is excellent. Illumination Pictures does a very good job on these kinds of things. They make a lot of the critters and the characters and the design and the production, all that looked terrific. What I felt it was missing, though, and I guess in the simplest way to say this, I felt like it was a really well put out party that I didn't know anybody on the guest list. And what I mean by that is I'm vaguely familiar with Super Mario Brothers because I played it 30 years ago. But the thing when you do these kind of movies, and they generally, it's one of the rules of thumb, you have to sort of set it up like somebody hasn't seen it. I mean, even a 5-year-old kid may be coming into this movie and maybe doesn't know about it, but because it's a kid's movie, that's the one that mom and dad take him to see. And I thought they glossed over a lot of that. We're sort of thrown into it. And I think it's a very assumptive film, which is okay on some levels. But I think for a kid's movie and for a movie that is talking about a material that are you starting to where it was 30 years ago, or are you doing all the various incantations of it since then? It needed some better setup. I think it's too assumptive, and then there's questions I have that I think are just bad narratively. Why is there suddenly this portal underneath the subway in New York City? Why are the mom and dad these old school bad Italian cliches, and yet they don't give Mario and Luigi Italian voices, which seems to me a little bit just plain wrong as far as the material goes. Maybe it's about political correctness, but then again, they have the parents who are, speaking like they're, out of some sort of Carol Burnett skit. I liked a lot of it, but I also was waiting for where's the funny line here. And I thought, to me, the key sort of mistake, and I will just say where I think they kind of dropped the ball the most, is I thought when they introduced Keegan Michael Key as the mushroom guy, he was going to be the conduit. Like, hey, what's going on to Mario, and wink, wink, all of you people at home in the audience, particularly parents who maybe never played this, haven't played in 30 years, don't know anything about it. Nope, none of that ever came. We don't know why the princess is a human being in charge of all these weird critters. We don't know why Bowser has, these turtle skeletons and some of those kind of things. And is that crucial to understanding and appreciating this? Of course not. But it would have been better. I think it's a fair to good movie. And I think with a little bit of more wit, a little bit more explanation, a little bit more consideration of how people are coming into this, I think it could have been great. And so for me, I enjoyed the eye candy of it. But I think the disparity in the critics is like, usually these things are made for critics and adults, just like every cartoon show that's ever been done is made for parents and kids. And there's lines and jokes and throwaway gags that the kids won't get because they're loving all the slapstick and all the movement and razzmatazz. But there's tell me a really great line in this movie.
Can't.
I didn't count one.
Can't.
And I can tell you in Puss in Boots, that movie was made for as much for me being
The Last Wish.
Yeah, which Illumination did as well. And that movie is made as much for me.
That was DreamWorks.
Illumination was working with them on it. I think Illumination, is working with them on it. I'll look that up. But anyway, nonetheless, that film was good for kids. It was good for adults. It was good for Pedro Almodovar fans because of parallels to Pain and Glory that they do with them having Banderas there. This film, I felt, like I said, was a party that people spent a lot of money on, and I didn't know anybody there.
Lots to dig into there. We'll come back to some of those points. I want to get kind of the around the room high level opinions. Don, what did you make of it?
I'm kind of with Jeff, where I feel like you have to qualify and quantify your fandom walking into this movie. Like if you, because if you're a newbie, and I don't know how many people would be true absolute newbies, versus the ones that know it at our age, where we know it, we're OG gangsters, if you want to go with that for Mario. And then you have the demographic of our children, where my kids aren't far from your kids, Ian, where they know Mario Kart. That's their Mario, so like my kids were just chomping at the bit waiting for the car scenes. They could give a shit what was happening before or after that. But where like, and maybe that's not my bad parenting to not expose them to more Mario, but again, I feel like that's still a thing where you gotta have to qualify or quantify your fandom. And I gotta agree with Jeff. Some of that would be right, where if you slow your roll, make this a little bit more of an origin story, or just kind of like a little more world building and wit, I think that would go a long way. Some of that was attempted. I mean, you have the whole, we put this accent on just for the commercials for the business thing to kind of discount, who Charlie Day and Chris Pratt are. But then you have, like you said, then you have kind of the stereotype Italian parents, where how's that a fit? But again, is this, second generation Americans where they sound more American than they sound Italian? I don't know. You can write that in a lot of ways.
I think that's the key.
I think that's what it is too. But like, and I don't know if you need a line to say that or anything like that. But I kept walking out of this movie, or walking away from this movie, and I haven't written my review yet. But where I cannot help to. I don't normally do this when I write, so I'll do it on the show, but I wouldn't put this in review. But like where Jeff's talking about with wit and a little bit of with an eye towards all audiences, I keep thinking of the Lego Movie, and it's not just because of Chris Pratt, but like just that winking nod of like, hey, we're doing something ridiculous, but look at what we can like. I don't want to say subversively place into all the things to speak to bigger things and have bigger ideas and have memorable lines. We can all sit here and sing the first 4 bars of Everything Is Awesome. You know, you can't do that from this movie. So yeah, I think I'll to kind of pivot from where Jeff is, not just something wittier, I needed something cooler. This just wasn't that fun. My even, and it's saying something when my kids, other than the car part, were bored. They're like, I don't know where this is going, Dad. I'm like, neither do I, but hey, that guy who's Bowser, it's the guy from School Rock, you know, and like then they would laugh for 2 seconds, like, oh, it's the Ned Sheebley guy, like, but like then it's in their head, out of their head, and it didn't matter. And like, you know, why are they singing about peaches? Like, there's just not a lot of rhyme or reason to kind of this splashy world building they attempt. It could have been cooler. I'll be the guy that says it could have been cooler.
Yeah. It's an Illumination Studios movie, and they're not exactly known for a mark of quality. You know, in the visual realm they are, but in here it's not. I mean, Super Mario Brothers 2023 is acting like antimatter to the original film, where the original film is basically has nothing to do with the game at all. You know, it's about these people who become devolved dinosaurs, and I guess that's inspired from Bowser sort of being like a turtle-sized dinosaur hybrid.
Right.
With this one, because it's trying to do everything so by the book and so for the fans, that it becomes more like fanboy service than fan service, where you're not really interested in what you're watching because the movie's more like, hey, let's create the stage for the game that you love more than actually getting into the characters. I would have, and getting into like, you know, what's troubling them. I would have liked to have actually seen the relationship between the parents and Mario and Luigi established a little more, you know, because that was like the one thing that the film had going for it thematically is that, you know, these guys aren't bringing in the money. They're still living at mom and dad's, and, you know, they're disappointing their parents. So what can they do? Become a hero? Well, they get magically transported into this other realm. But then the whole thing about trying to win the parents' approval sort of dropped, you know, in favor of recreating stages from the video game and things from the other games. And at a certain point, it's like I appreciate the winks and nudges, but I get pretty bored with it overall. And then on the final point of the voices, it's weird. Charles Martinet, who does the voice of Mario, Luigi, and Waluigi and all those guys, he does the voice of the dad, but he doesn't do the voice of Mario and Luigi, which you would just think, well, one, I think fans would have loved that if they cast him. And two, I'm guessing it would have saved a lot of money instead of having to pay all those dollars for Chris Pratt and all that.
I challenge that simply because the idea of 90 minutes of that voice.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the reasons they didn't want someone talking like this for 90 minutes. It's going to drive you insane.
Well, by the way, let me just quickly say, because I feel bad about this. It is DreamWorks. My bad on thinking it was Illumination. Maybe it has that movie had a little bit of the feel of some of those other things. But long story short, I was wrong on that. So pardon me for that. But it's let me issue this in because I know you liked it, and I don't want to. You're the one who asked questions, but
and also I want to get to Mark too.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, okay. Well, the other thing that I want to say, and I know this is going to be controversial, maybe this will get me in trouble with your fandom, but I felt there were places in it where there was a laziness. And what I mean by that is, of course, we'll pick Chris Pratt. He was so good at doing the voiceover in the Lego movies. That's lack of imagination. Mm-hmm. Get somebody else. If you're not going to do the Italian voice because of X, Y, and Z, whatever, and you don't want to cast the guy that Mike just mentioned, at least get somebody who isn't associated with heading up one of the animated movies that changed everything in the last decade. There's a scene early on where they break into a big sort of chase and they start playing Take On Me by Aha. Now, who's that for?
Oh,
because but here's the thing about it is that's lazy. And when Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino do song cues like that, and even when Shrek did some of that kind of stuff early on, it's for a reason. like it kind of ties into thing. There's no reason for that there. And with all the music that's been known of this franchise for 30 years, you can't tell me that they couldn't do an original score or something that was at least based on that, instead of picking
there was
80s movies, 80s songs that are not known by 5-year-olds, and they're not known by 20-year-olds, and the parents, they're sitting there probably scratching their head going, why are they playing that?
I would say that for me, the one like real weakness of this movie is the soundtrack album, pop tunes, because they were out of place. But I would say, as for the score, I think it was pretty terrific, because that was not as being familiar with the video games, you might not have picked up on this, but they did weave in a lot of the scores from the entire 40 years of the game into some really nice orchestrations. I think work pretty well thematically. But yeah, I can't defend the pop songs,
and it should have been just that. I mean, or else do an original thing that has something that's fresh and original. They knew this is going to make money. It's a big property. It's been a best-selling game for 30 years. I just think those kind of choices struck me as like either cynical or lazy, and neither of them is good. Look.
Yeah. Well, the film feels kind of rushed. Once they get to the Mushroom Kingdom, they have to keep recreating the levels instead of actually establishing anything between the characters. And it's weird. This movie is kind of like, it feels like a toy advert, where it's okay if it's like that, because as mentioned earlier with the Lego movie, you have something that's a toy advert, but it's about the imagination of a child conceptualized through Legos and through play. Here, I don't really understand what I'm getting out of it, or what Mario and Luigi are learning. And
that's fair.
Why are they sucked into the new world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because they happen to be.
Hold on, pull over. We're going to talk about all of this.
Okay.
First, I want to get to Mark and what he thought of the movie, because
I thought Mark was having dinner. So
I finished. I gave it a middle rating. I was entertained, but there was just this nagging thing in the back of my head of who this is for, because this film coming out now, it's what Jeff was saying, is that I loved seeing the amalgamation in the world that they came up with and everything together. But that's because I've been playing it since 1984, since versus Super Mario Brothers, that I played in a stand-up at a bar up by in one of the fishing resorts that my dad had. I was like, what the hell is this? I played that, and then my friend got it before I did, the NES at home, where you could play it at home, and it's like, oh my Lord. So this has been ingrained in my childhood DNA up until now. So while I did love the references, and if you think about the original storyline, very shallow. So, the not having a deep story doesn't. But what I'm thinking of is all the young kids that the way this is written, who it's written for. It's like you said, Don, the kids that know Mario Kart love the Mario Kart part. The Donkey Kong part, they know that part. But it was like they didn't quite have enough different level humor for it to be for the parents who love Mario, but they threw all the references in there but they wrote it on a level for the very young crowd, which is not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong.
No,
I think kids, but at the same time, you're wondering who exactly is this film going to be for at the end. For the really young crowd, they're going to love it because of all the visuals and everything. They're not going to really care. But if you're also wanting to appeal to those of us who have grown up to it, it leaves you lacking a bit. I loved the action sequences and even the recreations of the scenes, especially when Mario and Donkey Kong get together. I think there's missed opportunities in this film. One, they could have cast and had the original voice of Mario do the voice of Mario, but still do the gimmick that Mario doesn't say a lot. They could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
With the way this is written, they could have easily worked it into where Mario does facial expressions or whatever, and then occasionally he says something, maybe a little more in the video games, but still be sparse in his dialogue, and they still could have got the idea across. Secondly, you guys mentioned about the needle drops. That's for the parents because the kids aren't going to recognize Beastie Boys. I mean, it's a deep cut. Don't get me wrong. I popped when I said, oh my God, they picked No Sleep Till Brooklyn for this. That's awesome. At the same time, the kids in the crowd are just like,
What?
Okay, yeah, right. So I loved the needle drop, but at the same time, that reference is going to be lost to what looks like is supposed to be your key audience. And then there's the whole thing with the plumbing and the dog, which my son made a point of. Now he's 20 something, but he's grown up with Mario since he could hold a controller. Okay, and
You're a
that
good man.
scene, thank you. And that scene really didn't serve a whole lot. I mean, it was trying to add to the humor, but it didn't add really anything. We already recognized that the Marios are bumbling plumbers. You could have cut out the whole little middle section, literally had it to where they're working on the plumbing, the dog kicks the door shut, cut to the owners opening the door, wondering why it's taking so long, and you having the disaster in the bathroom with them holding the dog in the toilet and whatnot. That whole middle sequence where they're doing it, the kids were not laughing. The kids did laugh during Peaches. The kids in the audience where I was, they were laughing for Peaches, but that's because Jack Black just is Bowser. He loved this role, you could tell. And just one final thing with the song of Take On Me, that was not what was originally planned. They had done an original song called Driving Me Bananas, which was going to be a medley of the various songs that they've had in Donkey Kong games over the years. But they went with Take On Me. I'm not quite sure why. I didn't read the full article, but I did read in two different articles that mentioned that it was supposed to be Driving Me Bananas, an original song. But instead they worked Take On Me because that was the most awkward needle drop, though. I'm like, why this?
Yeah.
At least do Drive Me Crazy or something that pertains to them driving through.
See, I went in Rocky IV. Like, let's just get Hearts on Fire.
Jungle Boy.
do
Do the song Jungle Boy, for crying out loud.
Who's gonna drive me home tonight?
Exactly.
We got that.
Wait a minute, we're doing a ballad? That's different.
I did notice the Donkey Kong rap was in there.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe they included that.
I love, but I guess that, just to sum up, long story short, too late, it's a mixed bag for me. I was entertained, but at the same time, at the very end of it, I was like, what was the point? Kind of, because it was a lot of things that happened, but not really a lot of stuff. And I loved the throwback to the Super Mario Brothers Super Show because I loved that show. I watched that show religiously. That was fun. That was the way. Yeah, there you go. And every Friday was the Legend of Zelda episode.
Yes.
Well, excuse me, princess. But I watched Mario Brothers show because Captain Lou Albano was Mario, and he voiced Mario. That was a wonderful voice for Mario. May he rest in peace. I love Captain Lou. So this film for me was a mixed bag. It was entertaining, but at the same time, I'm surprised this got wide release. It had to be the names behind it, because this all honesty, with the way it was, easily could have been a direct to streaming release. The animation was beautiful and seeing all the references, but the kids in the audience at many times, they lost them. It was just dead silent when it shouldn't have been. And that's because they didn't get most of the references. I guess, to put another perspective, is Wreck-It Ralph did something similar, but did it better.
That's very true. Great comp.
They did it,
and I think to that point too, if you don't mind me just chiming in,
go ahead.
Again, I think this was very well done. Like I said, and it's for the kids and everything else, it's terrific. And obviously, the family audience, and it made all the money, and hopefully they'll do something better with this. But I dare say, from not only what Illumination did with the Minions and Despicable Me, but all the precedent from Disney all through their decades, as well as Pixar, and even some of the stuff that was done by Hanna-Barbera when they didn't have any money, but they created concepts that I think had writing. And the animation was sometimes shitty, sometimes great. I mean, obviously elevated storytelling went into the stratosphere when Pixar came into it, and suddenly it's as emotional and as impactful as most dramas. But just there's kind of a bar that's been set for all this kind of stuff, and this one just barely got up underneath it. And
Mhm.
you almost watch these things and go, well, isn't the cost of entry now you have to be better than just adequate? And
That's a
especially when
fair
there's
point.
not that many out of here. And I thought this needed to be better than that.
Mm.
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 Well, there's
I feel like-
potential. There's potential anyway. It's not even that
Yes.
it doesn't mean like it has
Let's
to
do a
be.
better sequel.
There's a lot of opportunities they could have taken to elevate this movie from where it was. And it's the problem with some of the other kid fare that they write. Not all of it, but some of it. Throw back to the 80s of where the material comes from. That didn't talk down to kids nearly as much as the majority, not all, but the majority of your kid orientated fare nowadays. I think there was some opportunity in here that they could have explored something, kept it the scope maybe a little bit smaller. Don't, everybody who had outrage, and yeah, I'm going to get on that soapbox. Everyone who had outrage about Man of Steel and the amount of carnage that happened with the fight between Zod and Superman. Let's talk about an entire continent that floats crashing down on New York and how many people it killed. Ian's gonna give me crap about my love for Kong versus Godzilla and how much collateral damage there was in
Fine.
Tokyo that they don't focus on. Let's not focus on the fact that Bowser's World crunch a good chunk of Manhattan and New York when it fell. Okay,
Yeah.
just put
But
it
it's
out there.
okay. We got plumbers.
We got plumbers.
Yeah.
At least the
Sorry,
toilet's
sorry,
flush.
Ian. I didn't mean to. I love you, man. You know that. But
Water off a duck's back.
Ian, do you think part of it is with your kids? You see it a little bit through a different lens? Because I mean, I have to admit, and this
I
is
do too.
as sort of
Yeah.
cynical as it gets, but I sat in there with a room, including Mike and about 20 other critics who were pretty like, what in the hell is this
Yeah.
about? And I mean, I don't know how many of us have kids, but I'm sitting there. I don't have kids. I haven't played this game in 30 years, and I'm sitting there going like, I don't know what's going on here, and they don't explain it.
Yeah. Well, it's about. I guess they're supposed to rescue the princess from Bowser trying to marry.
Well, yes, but I mean, who are these skeletal turtles?
those
They don't
guys,
bother
yeah.
to even set up.
Yeah.
When he comes in and takes over the kingdom, and the first thing he does is he destroys the castle. Is that smart? I mean, why is he doing that?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah,
Well,
it's a
he's
very
destroying the
rough-
castle to get to the Power Star. I'm
Yes,
very
I
curious.
guess.
You guys are all very smart. You seem to have like missed the entire point of this movie. I feel like I'm
No,
I feel like I'm
mean,
talking a completely separate language about what kind of movie this is.
I admit it's hard because like Critic Hat, I see all the holes we're talking about.
But
Dad Hat.
what holes are we
Oh,
talking about here, guys?
No characterization, no setup.
Yeah.
of who
That
they
is
are.
not true.
Yeah.
They
No,
establish
there's not
the
really.
central. What are
Why
you
are
talking
they? Why
about?
are they bad? Why are they bad plumbers?
Or he's thin.
Why are they
Because
bad
they're
plumbers?
not very
Yeah.
good plumbers. I mean, that is the classic
In
arc
5
of
minutes,
the.
we got the entire arc of the old man and up. And here, I don't know why they're bad plumbers and why they're living at home and why they don't speak
Because they
Italian.
have to go somewhere in the plot of the movie.
Well,
I mean,
that's not the reason that a story works, though, Ian, and you know that better than anyone. It's like you have to tell me why. It can't just be, well,
No.
because they're going to get sucked into this.
Okay, in the beginning of Stripes, why was Bill Murray a bad cab driver?
Well, I don't remember that movie particularly well, so I can't tell you. But
They didn't get into his childhood or his bad education or his alcoholism. He just started off and he was a bad cab driver who needed some direction in his life. I mean, I'm talking about a movie that's 40 years old, but this is a
Yeah.
classic trope of the person. Okay, why was Luke not a star ace pilot at the academy when we first meet him in Star Wars? Because characters
he
have to
hadn't
start
gone
somewhere.
there.
His
you
uncle.
didn't
Well,
let
I
him
think
know.
they set up. I think they set up the worlds
Yeah.
better in Shrek, in the Secret Life of Pets, even the DC Super Pets
Well, I
last
mean, the
year.
Secret Life of
I
Pets,
think-
they're literally house pets.
But they establish
start
what
the
is
first
the
15 minutes
what
of
is
the
the
movie there,
story of
yeah.
each of those characters
In
and
the
their
Mario
conflict.
Brothers movie, they are plumbers who are not very good at their jobs. I don't know what big like secret you're looking for here. It's very strange.
I mean, then I'll hurtle ahead to, like, other than longing for Peaches, the Bowser motivation, even the Peach.
Well, with
motivation,
Peach,
the
they
Diddy Kong
established that she
motivation,
had
like,
showed up when she was, probably a baby. She got zapped in
Right.
through one of these portals that probably the same kind of thing that sucked, Mario Brothers in. As far as not understanding the world or why these creatures are walking around, that is part and parcel of video games. When you pick
That's
up
fair.
the original Super Mario Brothers, the first thing you see is you're a guy walking along a brick road with these other bricks floating in the sky. Some of them have question marks.
Mhm.
Sometimes you get a coin. Sometimes you get a
Yeah.
mushroom that makes you big. Sometimes you get a flower that makes you blast
Well,
fire out of your hand.
Yeah, I mean, that has always been, I mean, traditionally the massive problem of video game movies is like video games are even the little stuff is razor thin just for the action, for the fun, for the novelty. Yeah, we have the Last of Us and we have, you know, very cinematic video games now, but when you go back to the old stuff there, like, or you go to the movies like Doom or even Assassin's Creed, there's just not a lot there. That's always kind of the case with these movies.
Right. And so the problem with those movies is they build up these elaborate backstories, these overlong, complicated character bios that nobody cares about because they're trying to cover up for the fact that, yeah, it's just a video game movie. I think
But
the
then-
Mario Brothers
but-
movie embraces
Sure.
that
But
it
if you
is
don't
a
know that,
video
Ian,
game
if
movie.
you don't know that,
Yeah.
I think the movie owes a little bit more in its time than
But why?
somebody.
I mean,
because it's not a video game. It's
look
not
at
a video
Guardians,
game.
Look at Guardians of the Galaxy. When they go to different planets and all these different realms and meet these alien creatures of all different backgrounds, look at the cantina scene in Star Wars. Do you need to know where all those characters come from, why they're at that place, how they got there, what their dreams and hopes are?
No, but I think it's sloppy storytelling. If you have these guys are not good plumbers, we don't see why. Suddenly they're ambitious and they go to help the New York main water break, and they get sucked into this other world, which we're not even explained why that's there. Again, you can say that we have all these things in the video game, but a movie isn't a video game. And I think they could have had fun with some of those tropes. Like for those of us who don't know that, like you do, I would have wanted them to at least make a passing glance at giving some context to that. Instead, they gave no context to almost all of it. And I think you do. They've reinvented Batman and Spider-Man every single film. They set up who they are and they explain the bats and the spiders.
Well, they
explain
who Mario and Luigi are.
No, but think of it as
they explain how they got to this other dimension. Okay, when Dorothy gets sucked up in a tornado in the land of Oz, and she gets taken from Kansas, and she gets taken to the land of Oz, do they explain where did the monkeys come from? Why are there flying monkeys hang out with Munchkin people, and we see one lady who's in a bright pink dress, and the other people are
each of them gets a song. Each of the main characters gets a song and telling us who they are.
All right, I'll say it like this, Ian.
Here we get Take on Me.
No, but here I'll say it like this, Ian. You're true in that there are a lot of minor things and little devices and crowds that are in all these different movies, whether it's the flying monkeys or the Koopa Troopers here, stuff like that. But somewhere balanced to that, there are always anchoring pieces that kind of become a means to an end. Like, yeah, we go to cantinas in different places in Star Wars, but there are characters that are staying together and learning about each other, and they are progressing as a group. In the Lego movie, you have these characters that are Wildstock, all the random places that Emmett goes, but they're the core that's staying together, figuring themselves out. There's a means to an end. There's anchors there. Wizard of Oz. Oh my gosh, you have the composites of her farm family. Like there are anchors there that are meant to kind of get your character as a means to an end to something of growth. What's the growth here?
Why were Auntie M and Pa? Why were they poor farmers?
Because it's Kansas. It's the 20s.
I'm just trying to figure out why that. Yeah. Like why they start off as poor farmers?
Yeah.
Okay. So
all right. Well, my question is, what's other than brotherly love? What's your and Peach maybe being a fellow transport? What's your anchor here that gets you farther?
What more do you need? I mean, it's an hour and a half opening salvo in a kids movie.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying is there are different kinds of kids movies, and I think this is right in Illumination's wheelhouse. You asked me, Jeff, can I name a memorable line from this movie? The answer is no. But Illumination is known for being, they brought us the Minions movies, which aren't, great pieces of, they're not wonderful screenplays, but they do have some pretty inventive, I think, great slapstick in it. I think that carries over into the Mario movie. There's that whole great scene, something out of like Buster Keaton almost, where Mario is going through the different pipes and coming out the wrong ones and trying to figure out his way. Like he's trying. There is plenty of exploration of this giant world that we get glimpses of through the eyes of Mario and trying to figure things out. there's the whole montage of, you know, Peaches trying to figure out if she can take him, you know, on this big adventure. She rightfully is skeptical of him. He's not leading the way here because he's not from that world. And so she says, you know, hey, I'm going to show you how to do this obstacle course thing. And he's like, I don't understand this. I'm not any good at it, but he keeps trying. She actually falls asleep and wakes up and he's still, you know, trying to do, I think it's nighttime.
She joined the audience.
Hmm?
She joined the audience. And that's
Ooh.
I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree, guys.
I know,
but
it's okay.
yeah. Well, that, I think, is there anything else anybody wants to say about Mario Brothers?
Oh man.
Well, this movie did make a lot of money.
Well,
Which means
because
we're going to get 15 more.
That's because whoever's their marketing guy and their planner needs a bonus.
Yeah,
This is true.
Because you've taken a family-friendly material that's very familiar IP to most parents. Release it the week of spring break for the majority of the country. Release it before the Easter holiday, so it gets a day earlier release. And again, like I said, the subject matter that it is, and there wasn't going to be a whole lot of competition in the family market
before or after.
Or after for this week. So I'm not saying it doesn't deserve the money. I get it, and it, you know, for a 5-day run, over 200 million for an anime, great. But that's because someone did their formula and did their math. Oh, and also it is short, as Ian said, which means more tickets per showing per day, because you can take your kids to it. They don't have the butt numbing 2.5 some hour Shazam film that's a family orientated, you know, mess. But I still enjoyed it. But yeah, so I mean, it was just the perfect formula altogether for it to make the money that it did. Yeah. So I'm not saying that it wouldn't have made money had it been released different time, but I'm saying the sheer volume of money that it was making was because someone figured it out. They were like, we're going to release it here.
And all the ads for it, they look real good because, you know, how
Yeah.
trailers
Oh,
do.
yeah.
They always show the best parts in the movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're seeing all those parts. You're like, oh, because even when I watched the trailer, I thought, this could actually be okay. I still came in with very low expectations. I just figured they just have to be the opposite of the original. It has to be very referential. It has to add the things from the games that you know, but you also have to be able to have an emotional anchor in a story. And I didn't get much of that anchor, and I get it. It's Mario. It's not supposed to have much of that. But then if you look at something like the Lego movie, it's like, well, it was about a toy and it had plenty of emotion attached to it. I wonder what they'll do for the sequel. I wonder if it's just going to be more of the same, or maybe they'll take some hints and add a little heart to it. I'm not sure. But, I mean, if I were to guess the big baddie in the next one, maybe it'll be Wario. Who knows?
They're talking about the sequel, and it most likely will be Wario, which would be interesting for them to approach it. And again, I don't want Ian to think, I don't want you to think I hated this film. I did not hate it. As I said,
I didn't hate it either.
I
just
came
didn't
out
think it
of
was
it-
great.
I just
I
thought
came-
it was
Fair to
came-
good, but not
fair
good
to
to
good.
great.
I came out of it entertained. It was, for me, you know, thinking of what the actual source material is. Okay, it's not that deep. That's fine. I loved seeing the visuals in that and the action set pieces. It was the bits in between for the action set pieces where I was just like, okay, because I wasn't really invested in the characters much because of, one, I was familiar with the material, but two, just the way it was written. It was like, okay, I know the audience, I know what type of film it is and what they were trying to come, and they do that. But just for me personally, for viewing, you know, I'll watch this before the 93 one. Don't get me wrong. I'll watch it before any day of the week. And I would probably watch it again at some point. But as far as it being anything other than, you know, what it is, or elevate it to give it a higher rating for me, it's not there. It's the middle of the road. It's entertaining. It serves its purpose. You know, it's just compared to some of the animated examples folks have given earlier, it's a little tough competition for it. And so that's what many of us have kind of come to accept a little bit better. Like I think Jeff said, the bar was raised a bit high. So, you know, even if you don't see the attempt at it, it makes it a little bit tougher for you to give it maybe a higher rating than just say, yeah, go to a matinee. you know.
Mark, you mentioned you really liked the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
I did.
What is the difference between that, the way they told those stories, and this film?
I
As
think
far as
it's
characterization, storylines, plots. Like, what's the
it,
difference? Why did you not connect to this in the way that you did to that show?
I think it's the
Great
same
question.
way. I think it's the same reason why video game movies, regardless of what they have, is an uphill battle. Because it's even with what I thought of with The Last of Us and any other video game. You spend a lot of time with your characters when you're playing a video game. Even the Mario, if you do the speed run, you're still with it for 10, 15 minutes. That's fine. But if you're not doing speed run and you're a masochist like myself and want to do every single level and not take the warp pipes, you're spending a lot of time with these characters. You're spending a
Well,
lot
you're not
of
really
time.
spending time with characters, though. You're spending
Well,
time with avatars.
but
I
you're
mean, these
still
are not.
you're still
They
spending
still count
time.
as characters to me.
You're
Especially
still
back then.
you're still spending time in this world a lot more than what you get in a 90-minute film. And with the show, you had an episode every week, or when it was in syndication, almost every day. And then Friday you had the Zelda show or whatnot. But you got to spend at least a little time every day in this world, exploring a little bit of the difference of the world, a little bit here. It wasn't everything at once.
Yeah.
It was,
Great way of putting
okay,
it.
this one you're with Toad, and Toad is exploring the family, and they go to an underworld. Okay, this one they go to the water world, and you spend time with just a few characters here. I think maybe part of the issue is that it's a lot at once. For those who may not be familiar with the material, or somebody who's going in looking for maybe something else, because even with the Lego movie, even with the other ones that we mentioned, while you do have other characters, you still spend some more quiet time with the main characters. And here you are getting a lot of references, a lot of characters, a lot of this world continuously through it. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but for what you might be looking to watch as far as for an animated film, it's going to turn people away or just turn you out.
I don't know if you were just zoned out. There were a lot of like quiet moments in this movie. There was Mario and Peach under the firefly tree. They had, some nice conversations between Mario and Luigi about, their their family bond and their kind of aimlessness and trying to please their parents. I mean, there was a lot of, I think, solid characterization in this movie. Not sophisticated, but not every movie has to be Pixar. And I think that this is,
That's fair.
well, what?
But it's a bar.
What I'm saying
nonetheless.
is, and what I'm saying is,
Well, but I
that's
mean,
why
but
I don't
okay,
think-
there is a bar. I think there are different kinds of bars
sure,
because
But
just
that
because a
Minions
movie
bar
is
down
not-
here is not a great bar to emulate or want. I mean,
Well,
yes,
I don't
beat
think this
it,
is
but
trying to emulate the Minions in that sense. I think it's the same studio that made the Minions, so you have
But
that
it's the
kind of a
same-
sensibility of we're going to have something that's visual and kinetic and kind of slapstick in places,
Yeah.
and as opposed to a Pixar movie that's going to make you cry and ponder the nature
Yeah.
of existence.
Sure.
This is
Pixar hates
just
parents.
it's being it's being put out as lighthearted family fun, and I hate that I just pulled a critic pull
you
quote,
did.
but
you
yeah,
did.
I'm
Well
embarrassed.
done.
Somebody.
Well
I'm
done.
sure it's
No,
somebody.
and again, that's why I think many of us
Well,
here aren't saying
fair to
it's a
good.
bad
Yeah.
film. It's saying why we personally didn't like it.
Minions,
I can
Lego
also
movie,
see.
Pixar. We're in the
I
middle.
look, I'm one of the few people that cannot stand the Lego movie. I think the
Oh,
sequels, I think both the Batman Lego movie and Lego movie 2 are much better than the first one. Yeah,
I'll
but
agree with
that's
that.
just
I'll
me.
agree with that too. I'll agree with that, especially,
But
and
we're
not just because I'm a
still
DC guy, but
in here.
no,
With
I
those, we're
the,
in
the thing
between.
is, I know where Ian's coming from with it, and
true.
it's again, I think it's what you're used to, or what you, not even what you're expecting, but just what you've consumed. And for what this is, for the audience that it is, while I personally don't see it, like I said, there were times when the kids checked out in our audience, but there were times when the kids were just gut belly laughing at the stuff. They were into the action. And that's the most important part, regardless of what a bunch of old white farts say about the film, is this is made for kids, and kids go in and like it. Now, what will be interesting is how much you might see an uptick in Mario stuff, because now the kids have seen the film, and if they're not familiar with Mario, well, now they may want to check it out. For me personally, for what I look for in animated film, it was far base level than what I tend to look for in an animated film. And maybe that's why it didn't appeal to me as much. Plus the fact that I don't have young kids who are watching it through their eyes, you know, and I think that does make a bit of a difference as well, because you can see what they're enjoying and they're going to share. I guarantee you, kids are going to share what they felt about the film. My kids are still doing it. They're 20s though, because that's my fault. They definitely share their opinion about films. I should post the one debate my son and I had going back and forth about Shazam, but
on
Wait,
TikTok.
1 or 2?
it got heated too. But yeah, and so at the end of the day, regardless of what the critics are saying, you're saying audience 96%. I can see that, because the audience that is going to this film, this is the film that's for them, for what they're looking for.
It's
in the
what
film.
they're paying money for. They're
I
paying
mean, we're
money.
also we're also at a dearth of family films. Like, I mean, there was that great article a couple weeks ago about like how there's just been nothing in theaters since Puss in Boots' Last Wish, and we're what 4 to 5 months after Puss in Boots, and finally something shows up, and we're gullible enough. I don't want to say we're gullible enough. We're happy it's here, but like we'll see anything at this point. Like some of us dads and moms who want to get our kids out of the house and have a family film experience. So, oh yeah, this movie. I'm no surprise that it raked. No surprise if it keeps on raking, even when Guardians shows up. Like it'll be the number 2 movie at the box office, even whenever Guardians gets here. I mean, it's gonna do fine because there's nothing else. I'd love to see this movie go up against stiffer competition and have a more like Jeff said, more accountability to the bar a little bit. Yeah,
Fair enough. Well, this has been the Super Mario Brothers movie review, roundtable, live stream, whatever you want to call it. So thanks everybody. We're gonna go because it's late and I gotta get to sleep.
Luigi Death there.
I'm gonna be
I was trying the Luigi Death there. I can't do it. I'm not
Nice.
scared enough.
Oh, what Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to let's go to bed. Not with each other, of course, but
well, damn it!
God, I know.
That's why
Playing the
I was
blues.
here. That was
I'm
I
sorry.
shaved my legs, Ian.
Hey, I will never know if you're telling the truth or not. All right, I have been Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We got Don Shanahan of Every Movie Has a Lesson and Cinephile Hissy Fit Podcast and 25YL. Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of The Spoiler Room and Special Mark Productions, and Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree, aka YPA Reviews. And we got a little Mario there. Oh, that's was that like a wait? Is that?
This
it looked like it was.
Totally.
It is a raccoon Mario, right?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
raccoon
this is
Mario.
the one where he has the
he's got the winged hat. He's got the winged hat from Odyssey.
I have had this since
Sorry.
I got an N64 as a little boy, and I just brought it back.
The Clinton administration.
Right.
Got it. Yeah.
No, that's great. There was the
Just
winged
how
hat
Toy
earlier.
stories about sentimentality and how our toys get abandoned. I don't want to abandon him.
Oh,
Yeah. Right,
does
dog.
Does he call you Andy?
Yeah.
All right.
I do.
Okay. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you later. I think. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.